Hello, I'm John Hind, Director of Compass Resolution. Today, I've got the pleasure and privilege of talking to Alison Porter, founder and managing director of Pennywise Consultants, a company specializing in creating and testing household budgets as part of the divorce and separation process. Hello, welcome, Alison.
Hello, John. It's lovely to be with you this morning.
Yeah, and you too. I'm looking forward to having a chat. So Alison and I are going to spend about 30 minutes talking about the service and support she and her colleagues provide to separating couples using mediation to reach their own financial agreements. Our hope is that by the end of this conversation, you'll have a clear understanding of the service, why it's so important, and how to work with Alison and her team as you go through the mediation process, significantly improving your chances of reaching a successful outcome together. So Alison, my first question is this. Can you give our viewers a description of the service you and your colleagues provide? As simple as that, really, at this stage.
Well, I think to avoid sort of using lawyery jargon, the easiest thing to say is that we create future budget estimates for people. And as you say, we test them as well. So if someone comes to us with a schedule of what they think they're going to spend in the next year and into the future, and the other half thinks that maybe that's too much, then we will help them revise it and make it as realistic and fair as possible. But what we're doing essentially is creating a cost of living budget. So what you're going to spend on running your house, your children, pets, car, holidays, everything. It's a huge thing, but for us, it's not. It's what we do all day, every day. We quite literally work out how much your lifestyle is going to cost. And that's it.
So if I've got a client and they say, well, no, I can work out my own outgoings, what would you say to them? Where's the added value, if you like, of using the service?
Well, that's a good question, because a lot of people do think they can do it themselves, and elements of it they can.
Sure.
But what we invariably find is that everyone's quite good at doing their personal spending. You know, they'll zero in on the holidays, on having their hair cut, on going to restaurants, all that kind of thing. But they forget about all the boring things in life, what lawyers call committed spending, that the costs you have to incur to run your house. So we find that there are huge gaps where there might be utility bills. You can check your bank statements and credit cards and put those in. But they're all the costs that we forget. I mean, for example, this year I'm going to probably be having to put in a new boiler. So we will say, okay, you might have to replace your boiler every 10 years, and we'll put in an annualized figure for that. We will remember things like the house doesn't maintain itself. There'll be work to do to the exterior, the interior. Last week, I noticed I was getting potholes on my drive, so I ordered a couple of tons of gravel. These are the things that everyone forgets, and we don't. We have a very, very extensive catch-all checklist. So some people might look at it and think, oh, that's ridiculous. But you do need to empty your septic tank every year or every couple of years. And we know the costs for all those things. We have a huge database we can draw on. What isn't in there, we research. So the idea is that we will remember all the things that the client doesn't.
Yeah, and that's so important. Working, if it were me, completing my spreadsheet, I might think I know what I include, but you may have other things that I've missed. You may think about other things I've missed, and so we're together. You and your clients are trying to create a budget that reflects their reality, aren't you? And can you give us our viewers an idea of how you do that? Do you look at historic stuff or present stuff, or do you look at future? What's the kind of process? What do you do?
Well, there are really three different elements to our service. So there are three different things we can do. So we can go through the past expenditure look at 12 months worth of bank statements and credit cards, categorize every transaction. We find in joint instructions, it's quite common for us to be asked to look at the family spend as a whole. So we'll be provided with the bank statements and credit cards, as I say, go through them and put every single transaction into a category. And that tells both parties what it costs to live together. And that, of course, is the most accurate way of doing it. But we can also just build a budget from our research and data input from the client and cherry pick from those statements, because it's likely that the house may have to be sold and you're going into 2 new houses. So therefore, the historic spending doesn't really help. So we can work out all the utilities, all the committed spending from a postcode. If you send us some property particulars, then we can say, right, you're both going to live in a 3-bedroom house in Hertfordshire. The council tax is going to be this. The water rates are going to be that. We'll work out all those costs for you. So I think in mediation cases, what we call our bespoke service, which is that one, is probably best suited, or even our standard budget, where we do all the boring stuff I've talked about, and the client can fill in their own checklist for the personal spending. We provide it and they fill it in.
So working together with them,
work with them. We feel it's very important in all cases to work with the client, because the client has got to understand the budget, and you as the mediator have got to understand the budget. And the upshot of that is also that I think usually one half of the couple or other will be more familiar with the household finances. I mean, in my parents' case, my father knows all about the committed spending, and my mother knows all about the food and the new curtains and that kind of thing. And so you've got to pull that together so that everybody understands, and that everyone feels that there's a fairness there, that the wool hasn't been pulled over anyone's eyes, that, we've looked at the cost as a whole. And I think that brings peace of mind, actually.
There's 2 words, yes, 2 words immediately come to mind: clarity and understanding. And if you help the separating couple together be absolutely clear and understand how much it's going to cost each of them going into the future on a monthly basis and annual basis, that then creates a really solid platform, if you like, for other conversations like maintenance and so on. But as a starting point, that clarity and understanding, I find as a mediator working with couples, is so important. And I really like this this service that you offer in helping them to assess what their future items. I was working with a lady just yesterday, and it's a fair amount of money, a few £1 million and so on, and she was really at a loss to get a handle on what reasonableness, fairness might look like in terms of very specific items she has in the future. So I can see absolutely how working with you and also working with her husband, who is going to be, in this case, the pair of the maintenance, how it's so important to have that clarity and understanding from which to have the conversations and mediation about other things like maintenance or capitalization of maintenance and so on.
And moving on can be frightening, actually.
Yes.
For both, or one half or the other.
Yes.
And we do find that our clients gain a lot of confidence from taking responsibility for their own finances, their own spending. And that is a really sort of lovely byproduct of what we do, because it is daunting to think I've now got to do everything on my own. A friend of mine,
that new stage of life, new stage of life, moving into, has absolutely all sorts of anxieties, and giving them that confidence and competence, building their, their capacity, their agency, sense of agency and independence is such an important part, isn't it? Sorry, I interrupt you because you're about to talk about a friend in a similar situation. Yeah.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that she's always been in charge actually of the family finances, but she's been married for 25 years and she really is finding the prospect of moving ahead on her own very daunting. So I think that's probably common in most relationships.
To some degree or other, absolutely.
You're going on holiday on your own, you're planning the holidays on your own, all that kind of thing. And so we can help with that. And if there isn't enough, it's also a really good way of seeing if there is enough money in the pot for, say, you might have been used to going skiing every year. Well, that's an expensive holiday. So maybe it's, well, one takes the children on a holiday one year and the next takes them on the holiday the next to try and, but if you've got everything costed out, then it's much easier to see what you can afford, frankly. You know, that's the bottom line. Because
and to be able to have that conversation again together, isn't it? Because although you're separated, to a large extent, you're still connected, especially if there's ongoing maintenance. And individually and together, for many separate couples, it's so important.
And you have to be, a lawyer pointed out to me that you have to be very, very wealthy before you can split one lifestyle into two and both have the same lifestyle you had before.
Very good point.
So there's going to be compromise somewhere. And at least if it's all down in black and white, you can see where the fat has to be trimmed. You know, well, we've got to run two houses now, which is an awful lot more expensive than one. So we might have to reduce some of the nice things in life, you know, trim the holidays down a bit, or you know, perhaps look at the Sky package or whatever, because that's also how we test budgets, as you put it. We will say, well, you're on a very expensive BT package. There is actually this one. So we look at those as well. And I think with the cost of utilities now and the cost of living crisis, things are moving so quickly. People are now spending quite a large proportion of their income on just keeping their house warm. So something's got to give.
Yes, indeed. And I spend a lot of my time as a mediator working with a couple on the same screen with their expenditure schedules side by side, we're having this conversation about, oh, I see you spend, I don't know, say £1,000 a month on food. Oh, I spend £500, or having that comparative or comparison conversation. So I can see how, if I'm working with that couple, if they've already worked with you and been through that exercise, how much easier it will make my job to help and facilitate, help them have a conversation about, okay, you've looked at that, you've examined that expenditure schedule, you spent a lot of time putting it together, you've invested a lot of energy and time and worked with, and which gives it validation. And now we can say, okay, those are the figures, those are your incomes. What does that mean in terms of the overall outcome, in terms of maintenance, in terms of capitalization, in terms of the financial terms settlement, which I would then move. So I can definitely see how, huge advantage. Huge. Can you just highlight maybe some of the more tricky areas, or the areas that really Bill or Sheila wouldn't really kind of think, oh, I hadn't thought about that, such as depreciation or replacing items, or that type of thing, some things that, you know, when they're completing their...
Yes, absolutely. Well, when it comes to cars and vehicles and things, we work out the depreciation on them and the replacement of them. And you might be used to replacing your car every 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. We take a steer from the client on that and then work it out for them. One of the pitfalls people fall into is very often their car insurance might have been on their other half's policy. So once you split up, you're going to have your own policy and might have no claims bonus or history. So we revisit, we do get a new quote for insurance and all that kind of thing. These are the things people tend to forget. And of course, replacement of items, nothing lasts forever. And it seems that these days, there's almost a sort of a button that someone presses and your machine conks out after 5 years, just when your insurance policy has terminated. So we work out frequency, we call it frequency of replacement. So say you have a washing machine and it costs £500 and it's going to be replaced every 5 years. We put in £100 a year for that washing machine. So we're looking at everything. We're looking at painting the house, the outside maybe every 5 years, 7 years, however often you do it, painting the inside, or having the carpets cleaned. As I was sort of touching on earlier, it's all those things about living in a house you forget. But houses are sort of almost living, breathing things. They don't look after themselves. The chimneys have to be swept. There was a program on the Jeremy Vine Show on Radio 2 this week about chimney fires. Well, a lot of insurance policies will insist that you have your chimney cleaned 2-3 times a year, swept. So we put in all those things.
So you'd ask the question, have you thought about your chimney?
Yes.
And they go, oh, no,
Yes.
I didn't. And then you then
Yes.
explain.
And we can either go through our checklist with them, which is great because you get, a two-way conversation. But if someone doesn't feel up to it, we'll just do it for them. That's quite rare. I mean, I can't actually remember the last time we didn't have client participation.
Yeah, and it gives them, as you say, that sense of agency as well, that they're working with you. I mean, it does. I'm sure I've got some viewers out there saying, this all sounds like the kind of service for a wealthy couple or people who've got lots of money. What would you say to them? What would you say to them about that?
Okay, well, the more input the client puts in, the cheaper it is. It is really as simple as that. We charge on an hourly rate.
Yes.
So if we give our checklist to you and you fill it in as best you can, and then we can do an hourly rate to fill it in. So, for example, it's happened twice this week, and we've done a job for someone that took 3 hours. We charge £140 plus VAT an hour. Job done. And we filled in all the gaps and made sure that it's, we've sense checked it and everything. So we can do it for people of sort of all incomes, and we always make sure our fees are cheaper than the sort of the mediator or lawyer or whatever.
It's just on that point very quickly, it's going to save them. I mean, people might go, oh, 130, 140 pounds and whatever. Yeah. But actually, it's looking at the value of it. What are the benefits of that? I mean, I think it was, from my experience of having mediated with separated couples for, I don't know, 25 years, that service is in the slightly longer term, down the mediation process, separation journey, will save them so much time, as well as psychological angst, and give them clarity and understanding, and save lots of time. I think so. Sorry, I interrupted you, but I'm just.
No, that's all right. And we like to think that any of our budgets will, the value of them will be recouped, in sort of the first month of maintenance or whatever, because we do trim budgets down as well, and we have a standard budget that it's all encompassing, that is £995 plus VAT. But if you do your personal spending in that, then you can go for the standard budget. So we like to have a speculative conversation with ideally the mediator and the client, on a sort of three-way call.
I was going to ask you.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what next. So if I'm now working with 2 clients. So sorry. Can I feed in my question, because you're going to
absolutely yes.
So I'm working with 2 clients, as I was yesterday, and I've identified with one of them. In this case, it was the woman. Sometimes it's the man. That she would really benefit from working with you, and obviously with her husband, but working on her spreadsheet. So what next? What do I, as a mediator, how do I bring you in, or your services in? How do you like to be instructed, if you like, or brought into the team, the financial team?
Well, I think that the first step is to have a conversation with you and the client, partly to establish the level of service they would need, really, so that also they can see who we are. This is a very, it's a personal, quite invasive thing, looking at someone's spending. Sometimes people get embarrassed about some of their spending. So I think it's important that they meet us and whoever's going to be working on their project, so that they feel comfortable with us. And then once we've established which level of service they need, then we send out an engagement document that has our scope of work in it. So it's all down in black and white what we're going to do, our terms and conditions, that all gets signed off. And of course an invoice, dreaded invoice, because we do take payment in advance unless it's on an hourly rate. And then we would make an appointment with the client. We can leave you sort of in the background at this stage, make an appointment with the client to run through the checklist. That takes between 1 and 2 hours, depending on, you know, how much chat goes on. And then we go away and do the budget. And we like to allow enough time to then run through the budget with the client first, because they need to check that they're happy. Then we'd send it to you. You check that you're happy and say, you know, you're really sure about that, or, you know, we might want to tweak this. And in your case, you're dealing with the couple, so they might want to sit down together and say, do you know what, we haven't quite got enough to do that, we need to tweak this, tweak that. And we allow time within our costs to do those revisions. And then once everyone's happy, we send a final copy, and that's it.
Oh, your uncle. Got a couple of questions as I listen to that process.
Yeah.
This is my question. So when we have that very first meeting, you mentioned with the client who wants needs your services. I'm thinking of the advantages and disadvantages of including the other party, or the other.
Yes.
I think it's because it'd be quite useful from the word go for them to understand what you're doing for their former partner, or the wife or the husband, whoever it is. And so it might be, I'm just thinking, quite useful at certain points to bring the other person in the instruction, what you're going to do, and sometimes maybe in the preparation, but you know, depending on the circumstances, so that when it comes, when it's being produced, there's no shocks or surprises for either of them. They've both felt involved in the process, in the instruction, in the process. So when I get them, of course, in mediation, there's no shocks, horrors, surprises, conflict about any of the items. Does that?
Well, we have absolutely no problem filling in the checklist with a couple together. I mean, that's ideal, really, because as I mentioned earlier, one might know more about the running of the house and the children, and the other might know more about running the car and the this, that, and the other. So yes, I mean, to have both parties there. I mean, our budgets are always based on historic spending. You know, we're not going to suddenly put in business class flight tickets if families have always traveled economy. You know, we have no interest in doing that, and it wouldn't do our reputation any good. So, but different members of the family would have different sort of recollections of the spending.
And views, yeah.
I mean, my father has no idea what the grocery shop is every week. My mother does that. So yes, to have the input and make sure that everyone's happy has got to encourage that feeling that it's very fair, and you know, it's reasonable. You know, we use that word quite a lot.
Reasonable, fair, done collaboratively, transparently, openly, with integrity, all those things. Alison, I'm just a little bit conscious of time.
Yes.
Sorry about this.
No, don't worry.
Just bring this to an end. I think it's important that you, because as viewers are listening to this, and then someone says, yeah, that sounds like it could be really useful. Where might they find, in the last kind of minute or two, more information, more resources about this, about your services, about you, and about you know, perhaps if you give them your website address, or that type of thing, or where can they find more information?
That's right. So we have a landline number that comes through to all our devices. That's on our website, 01531 640988, but that's on every page of our website. Also, on the contact page and about us page, pictures appear of all of us with our contact cards, which can be downloaded into Outlook, or very fancy, a QR code. So you can literally point your phone at the screen and download our details. The website does have a lot of information, but we are always happy to have a speculative conversation. It's usually Suzanne, our project manager, and I who do that, but there's no charge for that. Very happy to have a chat with anybody, just to see if it's the right fit.
And it's important for them, isn't it, to kind of to build that initial sense of confidence and rapport. You know, is this person the person I need for the thing I'm worried about at the moment, my spreadsheet and so on. I find that certainly as a mediator, that initial preliminary conversation, it can be really crucial to the engagement part of that.
Yes, I mean, as I said, it's a very personal thing, so it's important that the client feels comfortable. And so Suzanne and I do have a lot of speculative conversations. The website's all very well, but the other thing I'll quickly say about the website, which is pennywiseconsultants.co.uk, is that there are two very useful resources on there. One, we have a referral directory to other,
very good.
but including you're in our directory, and the cards are interactive, so you can click on the website and an email address. So the referral directory is called the Little Purple Book and is a great resource. And then there's our reading room, which is full of useful books, courses. There's an online course for co-parenting, which I think is a great service. There are articles, videos. We're actually about to start a series of podcasts, which you're going to be involved in. And so we would like people to use our website as a all-around resource for this process as well.
And what a great, I have to say, website it is. I've obviously visited it lots of times, and some great resources. And you can also be found on whilst I mention it, our website, because of course it's part of the financial expert team that we provide.
Yes,
Alison, look, thank you. Look, I have to say thank you very much indeed. We've given our viewers a great half an hour, I think, of lots of information resources. I know that I've got a lot out of this, and I'm hoping that those who are watching this, either professionals, family professionals, or indeed separating couples, have also got a lot out of it. And I'm sure it's going to whet their appetite to want more. And so they know where to go. So I'd like to thank you very much for your time and for talking to me about your services and what you offer. Thank you very much indeed. And I will no doubt see you very soon. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you, John. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed it, actually. It's been
me too. No, me too.
Thank you very much. See you
Bye
soon.
for now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.